Okay, well, that's set up. Um, so I will eventually start streaming games. It's just I, I do want to talk about current events as well. Uh, but so for today, we're just gonna react to two different videos. One by Rev says Desu and one by Sidney Watson about this frankly idiotic um, movement going on with apparently people overdosing on Tylenol, which you would think. Um, let's just get into it. This has been ridiculous. I already saw the Metatron video on it, so uh, and I do have a couple things I think I might want to say, but let's get to the react. See what it is that I have to say.
Hey, what's up, guys? Riff here. So I'm going to do this right out of the gate. This is something a little bit different, but please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video and channel because I think the subject matter of today's video is going to send me to the shadow realm, but I don't care.
Hold on, I gotta pause it. New to streaming, I gotta check to make sure this is actually recording because it didn't record one time. Uh, yeah, okay, we're fine.
Now, before we get into the actual topic of today's video, I want to share this first, which is related to the reason why I'm saying all these things. YouTube and Google just admitted that for years they were censoring and banning channels for saying things that were upsetting the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they were punishing people for political speech. And now they're saying, hey, look, if you're punished by this, come to us and we might give you a reinstation on the platform. Crazy stuff. This was considered a conspiracy theory for many years.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause this right here. Again, I don't like dead air in a reaction video. It feels a little parasitic to me, and I actually want to add context here to these reactions at this actual point to watch it. But yeah, um, I do actually hope that most of these people who lost their channels actually get their channels back. Even if you don't like these people, it there was again the rules were not being played evenly, and I would go so far as to say um, I actually think YouTube broke the law doing this. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But let's see where this
And
goes.
now it's been confirmed in front of the whole world. Now, what am I talking about today that's so controversial? Well, here was my
Okay, so now he's moving on to the Tylenol thing. Let's go back to this because I have a little bit to say about the. Maybe I shouldn't be doing frame by frame. Uh, yeah. So the text on the screen reads: "Breaking due to our oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations to return to the platform." But that's not all. Thread. I actually kind of wanna like, look this up later. Uh, but yeah. So there's another YouTuber I think is kind of important to point out here. Uh, Nate the lawyer has a video specifically on this topic. Now, I'm not gonna make a video. I'm not gonna make a video reacting to this because, to be perfectly honest, I've got nothing fucking like I can actually add to that particular conversation. So but here's the video if you want to see it. He does a really good breakdown of it. But there is one thing that I would like to point out. So I actually knew about this. Well, obviously not this too, but that something did come to mind when I heard this being brought up. I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like a violation of the law. So I know, really awkward book to bring up, but I have in my hands right now The Law of Superheroes by James Daly and Ryan Davidson. So this is specifically a book that is meant to teach you about the law, but through pop culture. Explaining where it gets it right and where it gets it wrong. Here are some lines that kind of stick out to me. The Supreme Court has held that private individuals can be considered state actors under certain circumstances. What are those certain circumstances? The Supreme Court has held that. Wait, hold on. Here's the Lugar test. First, whether the action results from an exercise of a right or privilege having its source in state authority, and second, whether the party can be described in all fairness as a state actor. The Supreme Court has held that mere approval or acquiescence in the initiatives of a private party is not sufficient, but state action may be found when the state has provided such significant encouragement, either overt or covert, the choice must in law be deemed to be that of the state. Two relevant factors that the court has described are one, the extent to which actors rely on governmental assistance and benefits, and two, whether the actor is performing a traditional governmental function. Do I have anything underlined on the next page? Okay. So, yeah, I think you could make a very strong argument that Google and YouTube and Twitter were acting as state actors when they were complying with the federal government to violate people's First Amendment rights. And I think that they should be hit with a class action lawsuit about this from the people that they wronged. Uh, uh, so yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. I think that they did meet the state actor qualifications, and I think that they should be taken to court for exactly that reason.
Confirmed in front of the whole world. Now, what am I talking about today that's so controversial? Well, here was my...
And I guess I got to say this one thing because you mentioned it earlier. Yeah, it used to be considered a conspiracy theory. Once again, the conspiracy theories theorists take another W. Strange times we live in, eh?
honest and raw reaction to what I saw last night. I made this tweet, and I'm going to quote it. Watching pregnant women guzzle bottles of Tylenol to get likes on TikTok. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you, this is not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration. This is what I actually saw in many different videos. Pregnant women taking copious amounts of Tylenol, a drug, to get likes on social media, and also doing so to spite their political opponents. Now, why are people doing this?
Well, I mean, he already kind of answered it. It's for attention. It's ultimately narcissistic. The attention has to be on them. Their ego needs it. It demands it. So, yeah, I mean, he already did kind of answer that. But another thing that pops into mind just now is you would think it would be among the common wit that the dosage makes the poison. You don't exactly have to be a pharmacist to understand that the dosage makes the poison. I know most people aren't familiar with something like water poisoning, but again, you don't exactly have to know specifically about that to realize that anything outside, anything in excess becomes dangerous. And there's also on the damn bottle side effects listed. So it's like obviously they should have kicked in the common wit that's like, oh yeah, the dosage makes the poison. Maybe I should take these within prescribed limitations. Mind numbing, to be perfectly honest.
Well, besides mental illness, they're doing this because the other day, the Trump administration said that autism is tied to pregnant women using copious amounts of Tylenol.
Yeah, I'm going to pause this here. I don't really care about the autism thing. Like, my brother is high functioning autistic, and yeah, I don't really give a shit whether or not Tylenol actually causes autism or whether it doesn't. I just care that we eventually figure out whether or not, like, what is actually going on. Because there is a strong genetic predisposition towards autism, which most people don't really talk about. But I'm not a geneticist, so I'd be interested to see if, for example, that same gene, whether its activation or deactivation, is environmentally triggered. That would definitely be something I would be interested in seeing, but not a geneticist. Didn't really care to go that path when I was going to college, so I wouldn't be able to tell about that. But uh, that whole thing, even if it doesn't cause autism, again, the dosage makes the poison. even if it's not necessarily going to hurt you, it can hurt your baby in doses way lower than it takes to hurt you. Like, we're all familiar of something like fetal alcohol syndrome, where it's like, again, that amount of alcohol is not going to necessarily hurt you, but it is certainly going to fucking hurt your baby. That's why you're not supposed to smoke when you're pregnant. Not what you're supposed to be very careful about what you take in, and that's again why you can't take certain medications when you're pregnant. It's because it turns out the unborn baby is a lot more sensitive to the things you put in your body, and therefore share with the baby than you, a fully grown adult, might. You know. So again, these people are just. I'll get into that later, but I'll rewind it just a
To
bit.
pregnant women using copious amounts of Tylenol. Now, you can disagree with this. I think it's reasonable to challenge these claims. I think it's fair to challenge these claims. But I do not think it is reasonable or fair to needlessly take copious amounts of drugs to get likes on social media.
Agreed. I mean, that's just fucking ridiculous. It doesn't even have to be the Tylenol thing. It's just taking copious amounts of it. This is actually why I don't like mukbang channels, because even if it's copious amounts of food, it just seems grotesque.
Because that's what's happening before our eyes. There are women, pregnant women, who are not in pain, who are not suffering, who are taking copious amounts of Tylenol to get likes on social media.
Oh, I remembered the thought I was thinking of. So I'm told, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if this is true, but it would actually be kind of interesting, and it would possibly muddle the correlation here. But I was told that women who have autism have higher rates of pain during pregnancy, like both higher rates and higher intensity. But rate and intensity, it wouldn't really matter. Either or would satisfy this particular thing. And since Tylenol is generally accepted to be safe to take within prescribed doses while you're pregnant, that this might actually explain the correlation between the two. Because then, if you are autistic and you're pregnant, then you're more likely to suffer pain during childbirth and therefore more likely to reach for the Tylenol bottle. But your baby's already, because you are autistic, and it's very likely, or not very likely, but there is a large, higher than non-zero chance that your spouse is also probably autistic. That again, you're gonna reach for that, and so that actually might explain the correlation. I don't know. That is just one thing I have been told. But again, this is why it would be interesting to see with rigorous study what in God's name is going on here. Uh, because autism isn't just one thing. There are different degrees of autistics in the autistic spectrum. Some are extremely low functioning, and some are extremely high functioning. But you know, again, you don't necessarily want to incur neurodivergence for the sake of what the hell of it. In your children, you want your children to be predisposed to the least amount of difficulties, uh, you know, developmentally speaking, and autism, even high functioning, provides real barriers. So it does kind of strike me that, like, if I was told that a particular medicine could, well, one, I would talk with my doctor first because he's going to know more than some randos on the internet like me. But like, if someone had told me that like certain medications could potentially have side effects uh, to my unborn child, I would probably talk that over with my wife and then my doctor. But
Now, some people might be thinking to themselves, like, Rev, come on. How many people are doing this? It's a viral trend on social media. I'm going to play just a small snippet of people doing this. It's disturbing. Well, guys, don't let me distract you from the videos going on in the background. Please watch them. But I plan to play some like clown music that is approved by YouTube in the past, and I haven't looked at their library of approved songs in many years. But now you have to pay money to play these videos. Like, I wanted to play a song, and it's like $50 to use it for your video. Like, no, dude.
Here's me, a pregnant woman, taking Tylenol because I believe in science, or the science, trademark, and not someone who has no medical background. I mean, sometimes the wackos are right. I don't know if they're right here, but sometimes the people you think are crazy are actually right.
In the past, they had approved music you could just play, but yeah, apparently not anymore.
I will tell Rev that I know he might not particularly like this, but if you actually pay for like, many of these AI song generators, you get licensed to use them in your videos. Like it's in the contracts for a lot of these AI music companies. So I would suggest if he's having a difficult time with that, he could do that. I generate AI music just because for shits and giggles. It's a toy to me, but you know one thing that crosses my mind is: are any of these women actually needing to take the Tylenol? Like, I don't know if this is just me, but I don't like taking medicine in general. Like, I'm not going to take Tylenol if I'm in pain unless it's actively interfering with my ability, unless the pain is actively interfering with my ability to do something. Now, Anton, hold on. I didn't get to finish this, but I'm not going to watch this anyway. See if this works. Petrov. That's what I can never get this guy's name correctly. I didn't get to finish this video for time constraints, but he has a video talking about the science of autism and Tylenol claims. I'm gonna have to watch that later. This is actually not how far I watched into the video. I actually had to walk away from the computer, so I don't know what the full context of what he's talking about is, but I would suggest maybe watching his video for further context on this. He's usually fairly trustworthy on the science news.
I'm confused. It's really weird. Not weird to the point of these people, but anyways, yeah.
But yeah, as I was saying, like, now that I can remember, I don't like taking medicine like unless I actually need to. Even when I'm having like allergic, allergies, I usually refrain from taking allergy medications unless it's actually getting that bad. So it just strikes me that these people, a lot of whom presumably are doing it out of spite and so aren't actually in any pain, would then take pain medication while they're not in pain. It just I don't I it's very strange. I get that they're doing this out of spite because ultimately I'll let someone else say it for a moment because I'm pretty sure someone's going to bring it up because Metatron definitely did, but
Again, I will reiterate, if you challenge these claims made by Trump, where he's saying that if you take Tylenol during your pregnancy, your child might have an increased risk of autism. If you challenge that, I think that is reasonable. But what's not reasonable is hearing that and responding by taking unnecessary and copious amounts of Tylenol while carrying a child.
mhm.
That is disgusting. And if I had one thing to say to these women, it's this: you hate Trump more than you love your own child.
Agreed.
Let me repeat that. If this is the highlight of my video, please let it be this: these people hate Trump more than they love their own child. Let that sink in. Okay? You can challenge what he is saying. And if you're a caring mother, you don't hear his words and want to challenge by taking the drug that might harm your child. Whether it does or not, if you hear this warning, if your reaction to it is to basically find out if it will, not because you're in pain, not because you're suffering, but just because you want to prove a point and get likes on social media, you are a monster. I believe this right here is child abuse. How else do you describe this?
I would agree. I do think that we do not, as a society, take anywhere near the appropriate care for the unborn as full persons. Because make no mistake, the unborn are full human beings. They are just not fully developed in their humanity. You are fully human from the moment you are conceived. And I do think that, for example, like if you are born, if a person is found to be born with fetal alcohol syndrome, so unless the mother has that weird condition where it's like the body naturally produces uh, alcohol due to some kind of yeast infection in the gut. I don't know. There is a condition like that that can cause false positives, but it's like, nah, if you were if you were like drinking while you're pregnant and your child comes out with fetal alcohol syndrome, I think you should be. I think you should be jailed for child abuse. Same thing here. It's like if you injure your child because you are doing something negligently stupid, then yeah, I think not only should you lose custody of your child because you are abusing your child, I think you should actually be hit with fines and possibly jail time because again, child is a child, um, whether they're born or not. Uh, Apparently, there's at least one person who did this challenge who actually overdosed and died. Now, I don't know if anyone here knows what a Tylenol overdose entails. It's not a very fun way to die. It's actually a pretty agonizing way to die. But yeah, apparently she killed herself and her baby doing this challenge because she forgot or actively ignored the common wit principle that the dosage makes the poison. Um, I mean, it's tragic, but I mean, two people died doing that. If that's if that's true, two people died because of Trump derangement syndrome. So
It's child abuse. Even if the claim being made is objectionable, any caring mother would not take the risk. And these people do it with smiles on their face. They really do, including medical professionals like this.
this is Michelle Vu, MD. She does fertility medicine in New York. Warning: 28 weeks pregnant. You know what I'm going to take? Some Tylenol with acetaminophen. I and my baby won't have autism. Laughs. I mean, I thought acetaminophen was Tylenol. Is there more components in Tylenol than acetaminophen? I don't know. I'm not a pharmacist. These people need to lose their medical licenses. Again, this woman is in fertility medicine. There is 100% chance she will be advising all her patients to take Tylenol. I mean, yeah, but the main reason I would have that she should lose her license is because she's actively filming herself abusing her child. I, I that would be one of medically abusing her child actually, which is a pretty severe issue. Like if your doctor gives you advice, I would trust I would trust your personal doctor more than I would again any of us online. Now, if you do find information online, you can ask your doctor about it, and you can challenge your doctor about it if what your doctor is saying doesn't make any sense. Uh, and also, you can refuse medication if you like if it's not strictly necessary. You can also refuse medication, like that is within your rights as a patient. And if you refuse medication, you can ask to see if there are alternative medications you might be able to take. Those are among your rights as a patient. Um, but yeah, I would say that it's not just that she would advise this to be taken because again, we don't actually know what the effect Tylenol has on children actually is, in the womb. And in fact, from what little of the Anton Petrov video I was able to actually listen to, it turns out most Tylenol usage is basically just a placebo effect. Apparently, only 10% of the population actually experiences the effect Tylenol is supposed to engender anyway, which is not a very big vote of confidence for being a good medication. If only 10% of people can actually experience its effect, and other people only get a placebo from it, but because at that point you might as well just take some like fucking sugar water because that's exactly what a placebo is. Ugh. So yeah, I am interested genuinely to see everything that comes out about the Tylenol thing because Tylenol themselves will tell you not to take this when you're pregnant. Like way back in the day, Tylenol was responding to people in tweets on Twitter with exactly that. Like we don't actually suggest you take this while you're pregnant. Like,
It's so disturbing. And you know what? Let me go a step further. Even if there's no link between what the mother does with Tylenol and the child they conceive, taking copious and unnecessary amounts of Tylenol can hurt you.
yeah, we just
That's
talked
not
about
a
this.
secret. That's something that has existed on warning labels for years. It can cause liver failure. Why would you risk that? Why are you so smug while you're doing this? You might hurt your child, and at the very least, you might hurt yourself.
I hate to tell you this, but the reason why people do things like this is because they don't actually have a sense of their own mortality or the mortality of people around them. Yes, yes. Death is a thing that happens to other people. To not to me, not to my children. It's a thing that happens to other people. People don't really like thinking about their own mortality very often, and I mean that's entirely fair. It's not a pleasant thing to think about. I do think we should probably return to the tradition of, especially if you work in an academic field, of keeping an actual human skull on your desk for memento mori purposes. Uh, but uh, yeah, that's the thing. It's like there is this sense of teenage invincibility of it won't actually happen to me, even if it does happen to other people. Well, it did happen to you, apparently, right? So it's an unearned sense of self confidence and invincibility from people who have honestly not been smacked by reality in the face.
And you're doing it for likes on social media. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a very hard couple of weeks. But here's the very sad part. It's hard to see, but it is necessary. You need to see these kinds of people for what they are, and they have revealed themselves to us.
I'm going to pause this right here. This is a different subject matter, but I do have to say this. This is actually where I disagree, not with Rev, but with Actual Justice Warrior. I fully understand where Actual Justice Warrior is coming from when he was talking about the Charlie Kirk shooting and how reposting that video online is grotesque and disgusting. Especially because it's like, yeah, that's going to be online for his wife and his child to see. And no one really wants that, obviously. No one wants to re traumatize them. But the thing is, seeing is believing. There are a lot of people who don't understand who don't understand until they actually see it themselves. So yeah, while I do agree, I do get where Actual Justice Warrior is coming from, and I totally respect his reasoning. And if showing that kind of thing is beyond the pale for him, entirely understandable. But I also especially if you're showing it just for your own accolades, for your own grandiosity, where it's like, hey, look at me do this thing where I stand up for the right thing by doing this. Yeah, no, fuck off. But if you are like actually trying to get someone to understand, it's like, hey, this is this is like this is the kind of evil that we're having to deal with right here. They will cheer for this for a man being killed in front of his family, in front of his daughter, for speaking. Then yeah, I do think that there is definitely a time and a place to share those videos away from the family, obviously. But that's only because sometimes the only thing that will convince a person is when they actually see it. I don't like that that's the case. It should be obvious that, you shouldn't have to do that. But that's where I disagree with Actual Justice Warrior, but I fully understand where he's coming from. And this is where I'm like with Rev here. It's like with this and with that, sometimes you need to see these things in order for like what these people really are to become fully apparent.
Consider it a sort of disturbing gift. We know these people walk among us who celebrate the assassination of Charlie Kirk via political violence. And now they're potentially risking their own pregnancies to get likes on social media. What are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, just for heads up, I'm definitely an abolitionist when it comes to abortion. Uh, I don't want any kind of retroactive enforcement, obviously, but in my in my opinion, I think abortion should be completely criminalized. Uh, Obviously, there are certain exceptions, but those don't really qualify under any form of elective abortion. That would cover things that are medically necessary. And in those very small cases of medically necessary, because there are very few cases of abortion that are actually medically necessary, um, they would have to be done in such a way that would respect the dignity of both the mother and the child. So, for example, if you're dealing with an ectopic pregnancy, you don't just go in there and you don't crush the embryo with forceps. Um, what you would do is you would cut that section of the fallopian tube out and remove it from the mother and allow the child to die a natural, dignified death that way. It and this ties back to the doctrine of double effect, which is where you have a action that has two effects. Hence, it's called double effect. One effect is good and one effect is bad. Well, there is actually a way to navigate situations like that, and it was outlined by Saint Thomas Aquinas. Uh, One, the act itself can't be inherently evil. Now, murdering a child is obviously inherently evil, but you're not intending to do that. Like you're intending to save a life. You're not intending to the abortion. Or you're not intending the abortion per se. And that's where the second thing comes in, is whether or not you intend the good effect or the bad effect. You don't intend that the child should die, but you recognize that the only way to save the mother in the situation is to remove the child from the natural life support it has. It's not something you want to happen, but it's something that does have to happen in this situation. And that in its own is not actually intrinsically evil, because what you're doing, because a child is oriented to develop within the uterus, obviously. But for example, again, in an ectopic pregnancy, child is not in the uterus, and that's exactly what's causing the danger. Anyway, I didn't think much about talking about the doctrine of double effect before coming on here, but if you really want to know like the actual way that you can deal with the whole abortion issue, the doctrine of double effect actually does provide a rather detailed, meticulous way to work around the issue of abortion, and it has been developed by way smarter people than I will ever be. So,
And here's the interesting part. Back in 2017, the official Tylenol account responded to someone basically saying, "I use your drug whenever I'm pregnant." They said this: "We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today." Like I said, back in
see, that would be the kind of thing that, like, if you had shown me that, I would definitely talk to my doctor about whether or not it's safe to take Tylenol, and then if the conversation continued, I would probably ask him if there are any papers or studies that I can actually read that go into detail about this stuff. Um, Actually, I wonder if there are any papers on NCBI. I may or may not look it up later. Uh,
2017, do you see the traction on this tweet? 77,000 likes, 43,000 reposts, most of which are quotes, people talking about it in one way or another. But yeah, it's trust the science until the science doesn't agree with you for a lot of these people.
yep.
This is a very interesting reply. And what happens from here, I don't know.
Now, the problem with a lot of this right now is we are living in an era of medical Lysenkoism. Like there are a lot of Lysenkoist policies currently, not just in medicine. Although there are medical Lysenkoist policies. If you really want an example of medical Lysenkoism, gender transition surgery is an example of medical Lysenkoism. Um, it's not so much the actual effect and the pragmatic outcome that's the motivator behind these policies sometimes. It is just the underlying idea of how things should be and how do we force that to work in this way, which, again, Lysenko. It's like, I swear to you, Stalin, plants are communist. If you just bunch them together, they will grow better. Like you would think that. Good Lord, man. I hate I hate communism so much. But it's not just in the medical field either. I mean, you have, for example, what is the you have ESG in, for example, economics, modern monetary theory, which is completely divorced from reality. You have elements of Lysenkoist policies in climate science. You have elements of Lysenkoism in psychology, which is why which is why we live in the most therapy upset, the most therapized. I don't know what the word for that specifically would be, but the most uh, therapized culture to have ever existed, and yet we are more mentally ill than we've ever been before. Because very clearly, something in this scientific process of psychology is not working. Part of it is really reproduce anything in psychology. You have that entire issue that nothing that like most of these studies just don't are not reproducible. Um, you have Lysenkoist policies in biology, with the whole debate between the modern evolutionary synthesis and basically everything else, whether it be punctuated equilibrium or the restricted intelligent design, because there's very clearly like limitations in what the modern evolutionary synthesis can actually explain, uh, especially with things like irreducible complexity. Uh, there are examples of it in physics. That's probably the one that's coming to mind most clearly in my head. And when I started talking about this, that's the one that definitely popped up in my head. With things like string theory, and it's at least 10 to the power of 500 different vacua states where it's like, okay, how the fuck am I going to test this? Or you have, for example, like, fuck, where was I going with this? I had the string theory right in my head at that moment. Shit, my brain just went completely blank. uh, but yeah, you do have this issue of the idea comes first, and then people get lost in their abstraction. And you got to remember, scientists are human beings too. Like they're motivated by the same things we are. And sometimes when an idea is so beautiful, people get lost in that idea, even if it's not corresponding to reality. And that's what the whole thing with Sabina Hoffensfelder's book Lost in Math is largely about. Is that, for example, in physics, a lot of people get lost in the beauty of their mathematical formalism, and it detracts from the actual development of the pragmatics like aspect of physics. That's why we haven't had any real physics breakthroughs since, or predictions since the 50s. So
At the end of the day, whether or not the claims made by the Trump administration are true or untrue, people have gone mask off and they've shown us what they really are. People who will see a perceived risk and say, I hate you more than I love my own child, and I'll put them at risk to get likes on social media. It is absolutely disgusting. That's all I got. Ladies and gentlemen, I I don't really know what else to say. I'm not someone to be at loss for words, but that's the way I feel the last couple of days. And thank you for hanging in there with me. I know these topics are a little heavier, a little different than recent, but the response to it has been insane. This has been, I think, the biggest month of growth in my channel's history. Let that sink in. We're tackling really hard subjects and we're growing. And I've been told And I would tell others, honestly, going after topics like this, it might and likely will backfire on you. And people won't want to see it and they'll leave. I've had the exact opposite effect. More support than ever. And I just want to say thank you guys as we kind of trudge through this really harsh landscape we live in. But I won't bore you guys anymore. I won't drone on forever. That's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, so I wanted to react to this one just because I'd have a couple things to react to, not just the one specific topic. But yeah, I mean, there sums up my thoughts about, I guess, about this situation. You could hop over to the Sidney Watson video. Oh, I'm gonna cut into time where my Oshi is streaming. Oh well. Okay, let's see if there's anything that pops up worthy of mention here. And
28 weeks pregnant. You know what I'm gonna take? Some Tylenol, acetaminophen. It's gonna work like a charm, and my baby won't have autism.
I always feel like we finally hit peak stupidity, but then things happen. And once again, I am proved wrong.
I mean, it can always get worse. This is bad, but it can always get worse. I mean,
Hi, my name is Sidney. Welcome back to hell. And today is an especially bumpy hell gondola ride indeed. Also, I really quickly want to make note of some things happening over with my tea company. If you are new here, I have a little tea business. I make yummy little blends.
oh, sorry. A thought did just cross my mind that I don't think anyone's going to think about. So there is discussion about the whole rise in autism and ADHD and other such disorders. And fair enough, that is a real health issue to address. But one thing that came to mind when I was talking about this with my family actually was we don't really know what the cause of this stuff is, and it might not necessarily be what we think it is because over time, child mortality has decreased. We don't really have asylums. So, and it's not as easy to just pawn your kid off to someone else to take care of them at times. So, what we might actually be seeing is that over time, less people are dying. So, if you had a disorder that would previously have killed you, you survive. We have better medical care. So, if you had previously been filtered out for X, Y, or Z reasons during childhood, so not just in the womb, but during childhood, you survive into the present time. And now we have, obviously, with this, any potentially deleterious genetic components could, would be more likely to bleed into the population. And, because we know that ADHD, autism, depression, things like schizophrenia, they're not the same. Even synesthesia, if you have a relative who has synesthesia, the odds that you have synesthesia are significantly higher. So it is entirely likely, and also we're just paying more attention. So some of these may not necessarily be worth medicalizing. Like if you have synesthesia, why would you wouldn't really need to medicalize that because it doesn't really interfere with anyone's it's like if you have tetrachromacy, which isn't a psych disorder, but if you have tetrachromacy, that's not really going to interfere with your day-to-day life. And in fact, most people probably won't realize there's anything different from the way they perceive the world than other people perceive the world. So a large part of it is also just we're paying more attention to a lot of this stuff. And we are also over-diagnosing. I've met many people who are supposedly ADHD, but they're actually not. Or I've met people who will say X, Y, or Z are autistic, and I highly fucking doubt it, to be perfectly honest. That's just because in today's society, we also give a certain moral weight to these disorders. And disorder doesn't carry a moral weight in and of itself. It just means outside the normal order. There shouldn't be any moral content behind that word per se. Fucking brother who's autistic, he'll even say it's a disorder. But So that does pop into mind. It's just again, uh, they survive from birth, they survive from childhood, and we have more eyes on these particular deviations, and that actually might explain a large part of the rise in these disorders. Uh, because obviously, if you lived in, for example, feudal Japan, some of these disorders are going to get you selected out, either in the womb because there's not good medical care, or during childhood because there's not good medical care, and also because in many of these pre-modern societies, uh, you- uh, there's a good. Let's just say it wasn't a very good time to be a child before the advent of a very specific religion, specifically Catholicism. So. Uh, I, I guess we can start. But that did cross my mind. Is there might actually be a rather natural explanation for why these are happening. It also might be that those genes are also being triggered from epigenetic, responses by the medicines we put in our body. That's entirely also possible. Uh, that is possible. I couldn't prove that, and I don't really care either way, just as long as we figure out what it is.
Number one, my winter flavors will probably be back in stock tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that's when I get my newest shipment. So like I said, no pre-sale, they'll just be straight on the website for you to buy. Number two, and I think this is much more important, as you guys know, I don't like throwing things away. And I have a bunch of tea that's going to be expiring at the end of November, more or less. Although tea doesn't really expire and they're all individually sealed, so there's that. So if you are cool with that, use the discount code We Don't Waste for 50% off on the Emerald Green, Earl Grey, and New York breakfast. And if you are somebody who has a church or you have a cafe or somewhere that serves tea drinks, please reach out to me because I have been giving no strings attached tea to people, to churches and to cafes and restaurants and things, just for them to actually be able to sell to their people, because if I don't sell all these boxes, I'm gonna have to throw them away, and I would rather they get use through these other organizations and through other businesses. That's all. Sorry I'm talking so much. I just want to let you guys know We Don't Waste for 50% off of those 3 flavors if you're not worried about the expiration impending. Now, we have an especially dumb thing to talk about today because it's the end of 2025 and nothing has improved. I am sure many of you have already seen the recent announcement by Trump and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., made here at the end of September that the FDA will be updating drug safety guidelines for Tylenol usage for pregnant women. Also known by its other name, acetaminophen, which I won't be saying too much because it's quite a mouthful, just the way Tylenol likes it. Anyway, the reason for this update is because some studies have associated Tylenol usage during pregnancy with adverse neurological outcomes in children. There is a suggested link to autism as well as other conditions like ADHD. So mothers are taking Tylenol for their headaches and giving their child a permanent one.
I had something to say, but it just slipped out of my brain. Sorry.
Kidding, obviously. We love mums on this channel. We respect mums on this channel, but the jokes, they kind of write themselves. I also know this is a very touchy subject. Tylenol, giving all new meaning to big brain. Okay, I'll stop. Trump and RFK Jr. also announced a promising therapeutic treatment for kids with autism that also have folate deficiencies, which I'm not going to get into, but there you go, now you know. Now, although I am a doctor, I am not that kind of a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not going to weigh in here about whether or not all of this is true and fair and accurate. And even the administration...
HHS wants to encourage clinicians to exercise their best judgment, obviously, in use of acetaminophen for fevers and pain in pregnancy by prescribing lowest effective doses for the shortest duration when treatment is required. I mean, yeah, fair enough. I mean, you should be wanting to take medication for the shortest duration possible and for the lowest effective dose. To me, that just seems like common sense.
With these new findings, with this new information, has said that because there is conflicting data on the Tylenol subject, the Department of Health and Human Services is advising doctors to use their best judgment, oh god, and offer women the lowest possible dosage for the shortest amount of time when necessary. Which Seems pretty fair and reasonable to me. I mean, pregnant women across the board are told not to eat deli meat because 0.012% of them end up getting listeria, which is a bacterial infection that does some kooky stuff. And
And I mean, I did just talk about apparently Tylenol has like a 10% effectiveness rate, so which I didn't know about. So, uh,
yet, despite the fact that incidence of this infection is relatively rare, they are still told unilaterally to stay away from the cured pig meat. So if we can do some broad sweeping stuff over here, why can't we do the same thing when it comes to these kind of drugs? That's the real question that I have. So in response to this news, instead of being normal, sane people, progressive women on TikTok have decided to film themselves taking Tylenol while pregnant to, I don't know, spite Trump to get the righties. I don't know the motivation behind this.
I mean, you got it correct there. I mean, the reason they're doing this is to spite Trump, because again, as Rev said, they hate Trump more than they love their own children. Um, oh my god. It's like an anti-cult of personality, to be perfectly honest. Where a cult of personality is like obviously where person acts as like a sort of like religious leader type figure. The way these people act, it's almost as if like he's some kind of. Well, again, if you see my other video, especially the one on the Charlie Kirk shooting, uh, this you'll see where a lot of this comes from. But
I did tell you this is one hell of a gondola ride today.
28 weeks pregnant. You know what I'm gonna take? Some Tylenol, acetaminophen. It's gonna work like a charm, and my baby won't have autism.
Where are the husbands in all of this? Now,
you know what? Fair enough, lady. You know what? That is a fair point.
a lot of these videos don't have audio, but they feature mostly the same sort of caption. I'm pregnant and have a headache and still reaching for Tylenol. Sorry, not sorry. Orange man is not my OB. I love how they do this because they solely want other women to get on the internet and then seal clap for their utter stupidity. But I think the majority of us are over here like, do you have a dumb? Here's me, a pregnant woman taking Tylenol because I believe in science and not someone who has no medical background. I am willing to bet this woman wore a mask in her car and spent 3 years being afraid of air. Oh,
You know what? That is a very safe bet, to be perfectly honest. But also, I can't help but notice that this is an appeal to authority fallacy. Um, it doesn't actually address whether or not the claim being made is actually true. Instead, the appeal is, in this case, the lack of authority that the individual has on this claim by virtue of them not having a degree. Which, to be fair, a degree is not nearly as useful now as it used to be because of how the colleges have kind of very intentionally watered down the the quality of the people who actually get the degrees. So
yes, I believe in science, but only when the people I like are telling me the science. I'm sorry, but you just look stocking up on Tylenol because I know it doesn't cause autism. I am not kidding. I would love to know who is impregnating these women because it's feeling a little irresponsible on the part of the men. I don't know, guys. When I was growing up, I heard that rule a lot passed around men about not putting your man pickle in the crazy sauce, if you know what I mean. Hello, chick.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, it goes both ways. Yeah, as a man, you are responsible for uh, who you sleep with, and as a woman, you are responsible for who you sleep with. And if you make bad decisions have consequences. So, protect
Jen's
yourself.
editing Sydney from the future here because I forgot to tell you that there is a kind of sauce that we do like on this channel, although it's not actually sauce, it's hot chocolate. And it's a kind of hot chocolate that helps you sleep, which is why today's video is sponsored by Beam. I have officially become a dream merchant because anytime anyone in my life says that they're having trouble sleeping, I immediately suggest they try 35%
Sorry.
off today. I mean, at least this woman is obviously pregnant, but I don't think she's actually even taking Tylenol here. This tablet is blue. I don't know, maybe there are blue tablets, but usually they're white. So this is what, like extra performing? And why does this read like a Tylenol commercial? Why have you positioned the bottles this way? What am I watching here? I am
Yeah, I mean, it's still disgusting because you're still tacitly encouraging other people to engage in this behavior, even if this is true. Which I'm glad she pointed it out. My colorblind ass would never have been able to see that. Um, but yeah, again, even if she's doing it for a bit, tacitly approving and encouraging other people to engage in risky behavior is not a particular. It should not be encouraged. So.
reaching for the Tylenol because I work in a pharmacy and know there's zero correlation between Tylenol and autism. That's a bold claim. Zero correlation. Okay, pharmacy lady. I do think that this last weird TikTok kind of does hit an odd nail on the head, given that there are a lot of people now who are making the claim that there's no relationship between this drug and negative birth outcomes. And yet there has been evidence mounting for years and years that says exactly the opposite, that does show a correlation between these two things. And I'm not saying how good or bad that evidence is, I'm just saying that it exists. A short trip down memory lane gives us an announcement from the FDA in 2015 suggesting a potential issue with Tylenol and pregnancy. This Johns Hopkins
I'm gonna go back because I actually want to read this. Okay. Safety announcement. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is aware of and understands the concerns arising from recent reports questioning the safety of prescription and over-the-counter OTC pain medicine when used during pregnancy. As a result, we evaluated research studies published in the medical literature and determined they are too limited to make any recommendations based on these studies at the time. Because of this uncertainty, the use of pain medicines during pregnancy should be carefully considered. We urge pregnant women to always discuss all medicines with their healthcare professionals before using them. Interesting. The FDA is usually fairly trigger happy about not allowing anything to pass unless it passes their stringent criteria.
This Johns Hopkins
Taking Tylenol during pregnancy associated with elevated risks for autism, ADHD. A John Hopkins study analyzing umbilical cord blood samples found that newborns with the highest exposure to acetaminophen were about 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder in childhood. Interesting. But it also says the highest exposure, which again goes back to my point of the dosage makes the poison. Now, again, I don't really care if Tylenol does or doesn't actually cause autism or ADHD. But again, elevated levels of Tylenol with respect to other newborns, are they considering degree in here? So,
2019 research paper, Taking Tylenol During Pregnancy Associated with Elevated Risks for Autism, ADHD. And this found that in newborns with the highest exposure to the core drug in Tylenol, they were about 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder in childhood.
yeah, so it's not that like the so this is a relative conclusion where it's like taking the Tylenol itself wasn't necessarily the cause as much as it is the degree of exposure to the Tylenol. Again, I'm actually really interested to see how this works.
Which is, that's alarming. In 2016, 2017,
Common painkillers should be investigated for possible risk to developing fetuses. Fair to say, yeah, fair enough.
17 in 2021, and honestly, I'm sure that they have covered this previously as well.
Study links acetaminophen in pregnancy to ADHD, but experts question results.
CNN ran pieces about the drug's relationship to risks of ADHD in kids and
Acetaminophen during pregnancy may increase risk of
risks
hyperactivity
to
in kids.
pregnancy. Of course, now they've changed their tune to Big Pharma good, Orange Man bad, because who cares about consistency, am I right? There are, of course, other research papers and other studies and evaluations that have cautioned women against taking Tylenol while pregnant, as it may lead to potentially negative outcomes in babies. People have also dug up Tylenol's previous tweets, where the company seems to admit itself that taking the medication while pregnant is not advised.
I'm going to go back to read this first. Congrats on your upcoming edition. So exciting. It'd be great to touch base real quick since we haven't tested Tylenol to be used during pregnancy and see what coupons we have for baby. Call us when you can. I'm not going to read the number. Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. ET with your Twitter handle.
Tweets where the company seems to admit itself that taking the medication while pregnant is not advised. Although, admittedly, this is contradicted by what is directly written on their website right now, which argues that it has been widely tested and is safe for women in all stages of their life.
Okay, I'm going to pause this. We stand with science. We stand with you. The science, TM. Anyway, for generations, families have trusted Tylenol when it matters most. Tylenol is one of the most studied medications in history and is safe when used as directed by expecting mothers, infants, and children. The fact remains unchanged. Over a decade of rigorous research endorsed by leading medical professionals confirm there is no credible evidence linking acetaminophen to autism. Acetaminophen is used worldwide as a first-line defense for pain relief and fever reduction at the recommendation of independent public health and leading medical professionals, and in accordance with the product label. High fevers and pain are widely recognized as potential risks to a pregnancy if left untreated, especially in the first trimester. Remember to talk with your doctor. We prioritize science as the core of how we provide care, and that will never change. Have questions about media coverage of Tylenol? Click here. We trust the science, TM, as the oh my god, as they engage in uh, fucking licentious policies to fight COVID-19 or support social emotional learning. Oh, good lord! Not Tylenol per se, but just the people who say trust the science, TM. Those are things that they tend to believe, even though they have no actual empirical backing. Let's see. Oh yeah, when was this? When was this actually published? Because we saw earlier for the Tylenol tweets, uh, that was 2017.
This is contradicted by what is
So then, we don't have a timestamp for this. So it may be that during the tweet, Tylenol was under the consideration that we haven't tested this enough, and this one it may be that they believe that they have tested it enough after the fact. But again, we don't have any dates or timestamps on this. So
directly written on their website right now, which argues that it has been widely tested and is safe for women in all stages of their life. For some reason as well, the situation has given left-wing outlets this weird haha moment, where they've posted articles saying conservatives are melting down about pregnant women taking Tylenol, or the women posting these videos in the first place are in defiance of Trump, but I think that's part of what's actually insane here. I personally am a big believer in adults making their own choices, but making good and educated choices, informed choices, which is why back when I made my video talking about hormonal birth control, I really hammered on the fact that a lot of us in our teens, when we're prescribed the pill, don't have what I would consider to be good informed consent. But that's obviously a conversation for another day.
So, oh god, yeah, I totally agree with her. You know what? I'm gonna see if I can react to an Aiden Paladin video, I guess, because that might be where I can actually talk about that. because I have a lot to say about that too.
But I think hilariously, the informed consent, educated consent thing is what is sort of circling this entire topic. It's not as if Trump and co said, you can never ever take Tylenol ever again. We're going to ban it and pull it off shelves and do all these things and restrict your access to it. They're saying, when you take this, if you decide to take this, make sure that that's a good and informed decision. The Department of Health and Human Services has more or less said, use caution when taking this drug when you're pregnant and speak to your physician. And they didn't even say that it definitively causes autism. They said it's a factor in a series of factors. So all of these weirdos who are running around the internet ingesting this drug to, I don't know, own Trump, to own the right wing, are genuinely insane.
To be fair, again, these people are motivated. They have an incentive to not understand what you're trying to say. Because again, orange man bad. It's Trump deranged syndrome. Trump is January 6th is the worst thing to have ever happened in the history of the United States, even though it's not even fucking close, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, their worldview actually incentivizes them to not understand what Trump is saying. And it is purposeful. Like, a lot of these people are actually probably do understand what he's saying and that this has no real bearing on what he actually said. Some of these people are probably just that dumb to think that they're actually just straight up, you know, that he actually said that, and that therefore this is an appropriate response. But, or at least in their mind, it's an appropriate response. But not all of these people are that dumb. Sometimes people do things because they're stupid. Sometimes people do things because they're malicious. And it's hard to tell sometimes.
These lunatic weirdos let their hate for Orange Man completely destroy their ability to use rational thought, because Trump and friends are not pulling this information out of their buttholes. It's coming from Harvard, and it's coming from other researchers and doctors. And
yeah, but here's the thing. The demiurgic forces are saying, the ones that are creating the world that they believe estranges them from themselves, is saying one thing. And so whatever that thing says, whatever that is associated with, has to be a lie. And yeah, it turns out, since they see Trump as the instantiation of all of those forces that they believe to be malevolent in the causal powers or the causal workings of the world they find themselves in their little hyper reality, that indicates that, well, what he says can't be true, or can't be admitted to be true. And again, since they're incentivized to take what he says out of context, this is the natural result of what's going on.
if there is a potential that this drug causes autism, contributes to autism, whatever, I actually think it's a good thing that women have access to that information so that they can make their own decisions going forward. And I mean, as a complete aside, I would bet a lot of money that the people currently going bananas over this right now probably, were the trust the science folks during the big sneeze and think that Anthony Fauci is some sort of living god. So, there's that. And I've seen so many people share weird graphics saying autism is some sort of superpower that doesn't need to be fixed.
Okay, so yeah, I have seen this before, and I always thought this was kind of weird. For example, in that one Predator movie, where it's like they kind of depict, I think it was they depicted autism as like a kind of a superpower, and it's like, no, it's not. I mean, you can have advantages from being autistic. One of my friends who's autistic has the advantage of a lot of this communist gobbledygook doesn't make any sense to him. So this is a running joke of he is immune to propaganda. But and that is a advantage conferred to by autism. In many respects, autism actually does at times make it harder for communist bullshit to infiltrate in, because they will notice the difference between their sense perception and what they're being told, and that what they're being told doesn't make sense, and they will have a more difficult time actually squaring that circle and falling for the spell. But autism also means directed inwards. And so you do also have autists who have the exact opposite problem, where because autism is an inherent, at times can be an inherently inward orientation, a worldview that like idealism that teaches them that the perception, the inner is actually more real than the outer. That can also be a potential danger for people with autism as well. So it depends on how the autism is actually expressed. It seems. Um, but yeah, if you could cure autism, uh, well, first I don't know what that would entail because you're not gonna. It's kind of like curing Down syndrome in one way, where it's like I don't think you're gonna really be able to do it unless you catch it in the womb. But we actually do seem like we might have a cure for Down syndrome too. Some scientists have been able to use CRISPR, which is exactly how I expected them to actually cure Down syndrome if they were going to be able to do it. But apparently, there have been some trials where a CRISPR technique was used to cut out the extra chromosome in embryos with Down syndrome, and it's like, yeah, so it is entirely possible, especially since autism has a genetic basis, that techniques like CRISPR might be able to actually, if we can identify it, to cut out and replace very specific genes that are deleterious. So the ethics of that, make it what you will. Uh, this right here is fucking stupid, but it's actually eugenics. Like, yeah, no, it's not, because eugenics is about preventing bad genes from reproducing by preventing bad stock from reproducing. You know, why there was forced sterilization. Uh, but you don't actually prevent anyone from reproducing if you use a CRISPR technique to cut out a gene that is going to be cognitively or physically deleterious to an embryo. And so the child grows up without that particular effect. It's still the child of the mother and the father. And you're not destroying the child and you're not negating the value of the child if they are actually born with autism because you didn't catch it beforehand, right? It's still a human being, still dignified, but you still have that opportunity with that potentially that CRISPR style technique to remove one of the stumbling blocks that your child is going to have as they develop. So this whole thing is like it's literally eugenics. It's kind of dumb. So it's not a superpower, but it's also not the worst thing in the world.
Number one piece of advice I can give for you: hire the most autistic person you know. I'm talking that motherfucker who goes nonverbal when there's groups bigger than 3. That is where the magic comes. Autism in the trenches, it's alchemy for literal cash.
That's interesting choice of words.
I mean, people don't get this, right? You're scared of the kid who looks like he might, I won't say it on stream, right? But like that kid is a gold mine. Man, the guy that made Call of Duty, you think he can speak and hold a regular conversation? No. People don't understand that weaponized autism is the key to greatness. I mean, my whole generation, bro, we all had a couple bad vaccines, but it's the motherfuckers who tried to steer away from that instead of just accepting that something is a little off. You know, we had some shit fried, but more importantly, that shit that was fried is the key to living like a beautiful life. Embrace that autism and then weaponize that shit. It's like so beautiful.
And you know, maybe this is a bigger component to this than a lot of us realize, and I honestly don't want to get into it in detail in this video, but maybe part of the problem here is the fact that people have over self-diagnosed with autism, and they have made autism this fun little quirky thing that you might have, that it refers to the sort of idiosyncrasies that individual people might have and display, rather than the debilitating neurological condition that it is that prohibits certain people from living full, fulfilling lives, that requires them to have full-time care. And
yeah, she's talking about obviously low functioning autism. Because again, my brother and my friend have high functioning autism, and they're high functioning. They live their lives. It's not that much of a real impediment to them. It's their actual decisions that are an impediment to them at times. But the disorder itself doesn't actually interfere with their lives. At least not in any real meaningful way anymore, because they've learned how to manage it.
you know, really is a condition that's not fun at all. And you know, I think something that really gets lost in all of this is that parents, regardless of their political leanings and persuasions, I would imagine if they could, would snap their fingers and rid their children of the profound autism, as RFK Jr. calls it, because they know that this is no life for their little people, and this is no life even for their grown children that they continue to care for. And if they could give that child the opportunity to live a fulfilling, happy, normal life, they would do that. So I find it extremely upsetting and disappointing that this specific issue gets politicized as much as it does, because yeah, people have autism and they have it to varying degrees, but for the people who are profoundly affected by this condition, it's not just little quirkies and idiosyncrasies. It's a debilitating, challenging way to live, not just for the person who has it, but for the people who have to care for that individual and ensure that they do have a quality of life. I really didn't want to get all serious on you guys, but I do actually think this is a very serious topic, and I don't think that it's a political topic. I think that it's a nonpartisan issue, and we should, I think, collectively be more focused on trying to find a way of bringing autism rates down. And so I'm sorry to the liberals who are upset about this, that this information is coming from people that you don't like, but they are committed to finding, not a cure necessarily, I don't know if that could exist, but they are committed to finding a way of ameliorating all of this for all of us. That last statement felt very pro-government, but hopefully you guys know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to get at, because I don't have a big brain and I cannot articulate myself today. The last
I think what she said is generally, like, because she's speaking, again, obviously, about low functioning and, autism, which, yeah, is definitely a difficult thing to deal with. But yeah, I think what she said is generally, even though I'm not a big government person either, actually, I'm not a big fan of the government. um, but yeah, I think what she said is entirely reasonable. You shouldn't necessarily want your child. You shouldn't want your child to have autism. You shouldn't want your child, for example, to have Down syndrome. You shouldn't want your child to have ADHD. You shouldn't want your child to have any of these like neurodivergent conditions. But their value isn't lost because they have these things. I mean, obviously, if you have a child who, for one reason or another, cannot look after themselves, they can still be a great joy in your life. I mean, like, to explain, I like one of the happiest smiles I've ever seen is like the smile of a low functioning Downy. To be perfectly honest, um, and like, their parents love that child, as they should, obviously, you know. But it's going to be it's a very difficult life to live with that, and you want more for your children, but you know this is a thing. If we can figure out a way to curb uh, without committing any kind of moral violation, especially if we can figure out a way to curb rates of like Down syndrome, ADHD, of autism, of blindness, of deafness that are congenital. These are all good things. These are all good things. But it's going to be a while before we actually get to a lot of these answers.
last thing I want to note really, really quickly, because I do really think it matters, and again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, is the fact that a bunch of people are currently worshipping at the altar of Tylenol, and for some weird reason defending Big Pharma, because, okay. But what's not getting mentioned here is the fact that Tylenol as a brand has been at the heart of a bunch of not great lawsuits. It does cause negative effects on the body, and people routinely take too much of it, causing liver failure, kidney failure, high blood pressure. There's all sorts of issues that are not associated with pregnancy.
Yeah, dying from Tylenol overdosing is not a fun way to die. It's also not very quick.
Now, ignoring all of this, including the new pregnancy information, because you don't like who is delivering it, because you don't like who is telling you the news, is reckless. Because like I said, this is not a political issue. This is a health and wellness issue. This is an issue surrounding us failing the next generation of little people who are being brought into the world with all sorts of conditions that we could avoid had we just listened a little bit better to the news and the information that was around us. Researchers have continually been waving the red flag when it comes to this issue, and it keeps getting swept under the rug. I have said this a million times, but I'm gonna say it again. Drug companies do not care about you.
I mean, obviously not.
They just don't. They are not impressed. They do not give a crap about the fact that there's a bunch of women currently taking Tylenol and potentially harming their pregnancies. They don't care about any of that. They don't think that you're some savior for their drug. All they care about is getting their drugs to market, and whatever ways, whatever things they need to do to make that happen. That is what they care about. And
This does also play into like the intellectual property laws and the patent laws, which need to be severely revised, because those are part of the way that drug companies can hold on to their products with an iron grip. If you can reduce, for example, a copyright law down to the original 14 years, was it 14 years? No, it might have been 24. I don't remember off the top of my head. But if you can reduce it down to the original length, then yes, the company that makes the original product will be able to make money as the primary seller at that point, but then the prices will get driven down because other people can come in, and if that product actually works, make that product to compete with the original company, which again means that they're going to have to drive the prices down so that you actually pick them over the other person. So all the ironically enough, a lot of the regulations about this actually drive the costs up. They don't actually drive the costs down, and they incentivize really scummy behavior.
I think to demonstrate that, all we really need to do is look at thalidomide, which was the
Yep.
drug that was prescribed to women, to pregnant women during the 50s and early 60s. It was a drug that was given to women for morning sickness, and yet it caused catastrophic birth defects. And the manufacturer of this drug, fun fact, knew about some of the drug's ill effects and chose not to publicize them, and this was a whole thing. Weirdly, this is one of the only things that I remember from the early days of my first degree, because we just did this like whole unit on something related to this. I don't know what it was, but anyway, I learned a ton about thalidomide. Don't ask me why this is the one thing I remember, but it is. So yeah, thalidomide was eventually, after all these babies were deformed and all these mothers and fathers and lives were traumatized and broken and destroyed, they finally pulled the drug off shelves and kind of were like, well, oopsie, look, we kind of messed up. This video has gotten really serious and I wasn't intending for it to, but I guess I care about this a lot, and I want to make the point that I think history tells us a lot about how drug companies are going to behave, because it's not as if they've changed since the days of thalidomide. They've just gotten much better at hiding their nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you can literally pay for peer review. This is actually the reason why peer review watch exists, is keep an eye out for things like this. But yeah, I mean, again, doctors, scientists, they're human. And that means that they're subject to the same moral failings that the rest of us are. I remember Kirsche talking about. I remember Kirsche talking about the issue of organs being taken by doctors from patients who weren't actually dead. Like, interesting. Definitely made me decide to change my organ donation status after that particular news story. But
ultimately, I hate the fact that a bunch of mums are going to be looking at their autistic children and thinking, did I do something wrong? That makes me sad for them, it really does. But I am glad that there might potentially be some sort of answer to that question.
I don't really agree. Like, obviously, if you were taking Tylenol, and Tylenol, hypothetically speaking, does cause autism, or at least does increase the odds that someone with a genetic predisposition to autism would develop it. So, it's a probabilistic factor in this hypothetical scenario. Then, yeah, if you didn't know about it at the time, yeah, I feel bad for that person, because she really shouldn't be feeling this. But if you're that one person who's literally spiking it to spite Trump, and then it happens, Like, nah, I don't feel the slightest fucking bit of sympathy for you, to be perfectly honest. It's literally the FO stage of the FAFO, you know, uh, cycle. So, but again, we don't know if this is actually causing it.
Because even if it makes you feel bad, maybe it's good to know what happened and what transpired that might have led to a specific outcome. So, on that front, although
Fair.
it's sad, maybe it's a good thing. And all these people who are running around taking these drugs as a form of protest are really just useful idiots. In the end, I do believe that knowledge is power, and I think that the more that we learn about specific conditions and the many, many contributing factors that lead to them, the better off we will be as a society. But for right now, I do wish that the people on TikTok would just stop. Now, on that very happy and pleasant note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder, check out Dream/Beam. Using the link in the description, I cannot sing the praises of this hot chocolate enough. I love this stuff. It's just become such a staple in my household. I really like this company, so if this is something that you think would work for you, absolutely check them out. And I hope you have a good sleep. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Are you on my side of this issue where you're looking at this all unfold and just thinking, why would you do this? Why would you politicize this? This is so silly. Do you think that people are doing what they're doing on TikTok because they're trying to protest Trump? What do you think underpins that? Because I don't really think I have an answer to.
I do think some of them kind of hope that something happens so that they can get victim points for the fact that they have an autistic child. I don't know that all of them are doing that, but I have a sneaking suspicion some of them are kind of hoping that their child will turn out to have autism so that they can play the victim. You know, the whole Munchausen by proxy thing. So it's like, I don't. That's just my thing, because you will find that a lot of these leftist women, when they have children, they will over medicalize them. They will, for example, force them coerce them to be gender dysphoric, all kinds of heinous shit, to be perfectly honest. And I have a sneaking suspicion there's a little bit of that going on, like in the psychology of all this.
That. Do you think that there is actually a meaningful relationship between Tylenol and autism? And do you think that's something that maybe we should explore further? What
I mean, I don't think we have enough evidence either way, so we probably should explore that further.
do you think of all of the little components surrounding this issue? The fact that the media are making fun of Trump and co for this, the fact that in years gone by, they've pointed out the relationship between this drug and autism, and what you generally make of this issue overall.
I agree with Kirsha. Like, as much as you think you hate journos, and by that I don't mean the person per se, but like the function that they play. It doesn't matter how much you think you hate journos, you don't hate them enough, to be perfectly honest. Journalism doesn't really exist in the mainstream media in any meaningful sense.
As always, if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always like having you along for the full ride. If you are new here and you're not subscribed to the channel and you would like to see more of me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe, as well as leaving this video a like and a comment, because I do read the majority of them. I really do. My mom called me out. She's like, I bet you don't. And I was like, no, I really do. And I like hearing your feedback. Of course, my little chickadee noodle people, I hope you stay safe and well and make very good choices, because those are important. And I will see your wonderful little faces in the next video.
Right. Well, cool. Okay. Uh yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add at the end of this, to be perfectly honest. Um I mean, I basically said most of what I wanted to say. Uh Probably not as eloquently as I would have if I had come to this prepared, but I kind of wanted to develop the ability to do this kind of commentary on the fly. So, uh, yeah, I mean, I actually haven't watched a Sydney Watson video in quite a while. I'm actually gonna have to start watching her again, because I have plenty of time to actually listen to YouTube videos while I'm at work. I use YouTube and like Rumble more, the radio, as a radio than anything else. Uh, so, well, I'm gonna bounce. If you were here, I hope you enjoyed this reaction. I hope this is better than the unique Namosaurus reaction I did because I was quite disappointed in how long it took me to actually be able to add anything of substance to the video. Um, but I hope I was actually able to add something substantial to like these videos while I reacted to them. Um, well, I'm 35 minutes late to my Oshi. Y'all have a lovely day, and I am logging off. I can't raid her yet, but as soon as I'm able to raid, I'm gonna definitely see if I can raid my Oshi at some point.